Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Kraft, Dean of the Hammack School of Business. It's great to see everybody. It's very excited to have you here. I'd like to invite our university president, Dr. McClyman, to come forward and say a few words.
Thank you all for being here. This is wonderful. Dean Kraft is going to introduce our guest today, R.G. Lamar, who is a graduate of Oglethorpe University and has a few stories to tell, some of which have to do with work and some maybe a little different. So we'll hear from that. But what I would like to do is tell you a little bit about the Rikard Lecture, the series that this is part of. So the Mack A Rikard Lecture Series introduces students to current issues in business as presented by business and civic leaders who are recognized leaders in their professions. Established in 1991, it is named after the late Mack A. Rikard, a 1937 Oglethorpe alumnus, an honorary degree recipient, Athletics Hall of Fame member, and Trustee Emeritus. Mr. Rikard was former president of Allied Products Company in Birmingham, Alabama, and a supporter of Oglethorpe athletics and student scholarships. Today's installment of the Rikard Lecture Series with Mr. Lamar is the kind of quality event that we are incredibly proud to support here at Oglethorpe University, marrying the excellence that our students experience in the classroom with the experience and wisdom and generosity of our alumni. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'll turn it over to Dean.
So the Hammack School of Business is pleased to welcome R.G. Lamar as your Rikard Lecturer. R.G. is a 2005 graduate of Oglethorpe and serves as CEO of Stuckey's. Since 1937, Stuckey's has been a roadside travel staple. I myself have consumed more than a few pecan log rolls from Stuckey's. Stuckey's has over 60 licensed locations throughout the U.S. R.G.'s had an exceedingly interesting career that includes the U.S. Department of State, where he worked in Afghanistan, agribusiness, where he's managed his family's pecan business, consumer packaged goods, and then on to being the CEO of Stuckey's. It's the kind of career that strikes me when you read about it. It shows the power of the liberal arts and the ability to pivot from one opportunity to another. And I think is really the diversity of what R.G.'s been able to accomplish in his career is definitely a testament to the amazing power of the liberal arts. So please welcome back to campus your Rikard Lecturer, R.G. Lamar. So I know this is a strange time to be starting an interview with a potential gotcha question, but that's what we're going to do. And so one of you would chime in as to whether, and this is going to affect the rest of the interview, is it pecan or pecan? What's the right way of saying it?
So, of course, I have an answer to this question. Mm-hmm. And what my father always said is that in the pecan business, we buy pecans, but we sell pecans. Ah. So, got to make that margin, right?
All right. That's right. So, good answer. Good answer. Okay. So let's start with perhaps tell us a bit about your Oglethorpe story. How did you come to be a student here? How did you discover us?
Yeah, great question. I grew up in a small rural town in an agricultural family in an agricultural town. And if you had asked me what the liberal arts were when I came here, I probably could not have told you. I was recruited by the golf coach here. And what I really wanted to do in college was play golf. So I've got Coach Owen to thank for all that Oglethorpe has given to me.
Well, that's terrific. So tell us more about how the liberal arts has presented itself in your career and your life. I mean, how's this experience you think shaped you?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a long answer.
Go right ahead.
And it'll be a very liberal arts kind of answer. What is the liberal arts? It's a general education. Do we have any Wendell Berry fans in the room today? My wife's raising her hand. Wendell Berry's one of my favorite authors, lives in Kentucky. Most lecturers probably don't bring a stack of books to the lecture, but I did.
Only the best ones do.
Yeah, you might not have had an Oglethorpe grad do the lecture before, so that may be why you haven't had a stack of books before. I want to read something from one of his essays. This came out in 1987. This question of what all young people should be expected to learn is now little discussed. The reason, apparently, is the tacit belief that now, with the demands of specialization so numerous and varied, such a question would be extremely hard, if not impossible, to answer. And yet this question appears to be as much within the reach of reason and common sense as any other. It cannot be denied, to begin with, that all the disciplines rest upon the knowledge of letters and the knowledge of numbers. Skipping down a little bit, this provides us with a description of a probably adequate, quote, core curriculum, one that would prepare a student well both to choose a direction of further study and to go in that direction. I think what I received here was a good general education and a core curriculum. I thought it was so interesting that he uses the exact phrase that we use here. The medieval scholastics talked about the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric. And I think what they meant by that is elemental knowledge, right? That he uses another metaphor in here of a tree. And he complains that industrial education has become like limbs that have been lopped off from the tree. They're unmoored to a core, to a trunk. And so the trunk is like that trivium. It's the elemental elements of knowledge that we need to be able to advance more into other areas. Yes, it is that. But I think there's more to it. And I've been asking in the social hour if Daniel Kahneman is a popular author around here. Mixed results. He has passed away in the last year or two, done a lot of work in behavioral psychology. His basic idea in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is that there's two systems that operate in our brains. One is fast, one is slow. So fast system one, slow is system two. And a good way to understand it would be if you're driving to a new job for the first time, you've never been there before, you've got to pay really close attention. Well, now we'll say to the Google Maps app on your phone. But you want to make sure where the blue line turns, you got to get the right place, right? So this is system two. It's slow thinking. It's analytical, plotting, deliberate. That's different from system one, which is intuitive, fast. So if you've been there 500 times, you're going to leave, and 40 minutes later, you'll get there and you won't even remember the trip, right? It's actually a little bit terrifying how system one can work in that way. Since we've got a bunch of Oglethorpe students and alumni here, I'm going to reference Aristotle. Aristotle had an idea called eudaimonia, the good life or human flourishing. We learn here that that is attained through virtue. And Aristotle makes the argument, which I always found very circular, that the way to become virtuous is to be virtuous, right? We become just by doing just things, he says. I always had a hard time understanding what that meant when I was studying Aristotle here. I think Daniel Kahneman helps us understand that. This is going somewhere, I promise. It's a long answer to your question. I think that one of the things Kahneman argues is that system one and system two work together. And system two is always correcting and moderating system one. And so if we want to become just, I think what Kahneman can help us understand is that's system one learning to act intuitively in a way that more accurately reflects the true and the good and the beautiful. And that's what system two can help us do, as we get repetitions moderating system one, we become more that way. That makes sense to me of Aristotle's point. I don't know if it's what he meant, but it makes sense to me. So how did the liberal arts education I received at Oglethorpe affect my life and career? I think what happens in the core curriculum is we get reps with system two regulating system one. When you come here as a freshman and read a text that challenges assumptions that you've brought into this place, and you're brought to the point not of viewing the text from an objective distance, but actually engaging with the argument of the text. I've got to decide for myself, do I think this is true or not, what this author is claiming? That requires you to sometimes give up things that you've thought for a long time. So back to Kahneman, we have this thing called loss aversion that he talks about. Human beings roughly view the loss, the pain of loss, roughly twice as large as the benefit of gain. That's just the way we are. And he's proven this with research. This is at the bottom of something. I don't know if Dr. Cower, he is still here. I learned about sunk costs in Dr. Cower's class 21 years ago, roughly. So sunk cost fallacy, Daniel Kahneman helps us understand this loss aversion is at the root of that, right? If we have invested reputation, energy, money in a direction, and then we realize that it's wrong, it's very difficult to admit that and to humbly change our minds. Not unlike what it's like for that freshman who comes in with ideas that he's invested in or she's invested in and has to then rethink those things. So that's the kind of reps. As I've thought about this and pondered it, we get reps on that kind of process. That's what happens in the core that's a little more than just that elemental knowledge. There's an X factor there. And I can give examples of that. I don't know if I should continue talking, but maybe just on that point of the sunk cost fallacy as one example. At Stuckey's, some of you may not know much about what Stuckey's is, but we manufacture pecan snacks and candies. And we made a decision early on in this venture to acquire a business a little bit south of Augusta, and a large part of the value of that business was a pecan shelling plant. It came with about $8 million of revenue and some other, a facility, but a big part was a shelling operation. And we ran into a lot of challenges with that. We also borrowed about $5 million through an SBA loan to do that acquisition. So we came to the point where we had to ask the question, should we actually be shelling pecans? Does this really make sense for what we want to do with this business? And in the end, we decided we shouldn't. I cannot tell you how excruciating it was to admit that we had made a mistake by borrowing that money and buying that facility. But at that point, it was the wrong thing. And so we sold all the shelling equipment. We converted that space to a value-added production facility because Stuckey's is a brand, right? That's really our greatest asset is the brand that we have. We should be using all of our resources to manufacture branded products. Something in the middle of the supply chain really doesn't make sense for us. We found out because we were only shelling 2 million pounds a year, we could contract from a third-party vendor and buy the pecans cheaper than we could actually shell them ourselves. There was old equipment in the shelling plant. It was causing worker safety issues. Our workers' comp mod was double what it should have been. That's improved now dramatically. We couldn't get a food safety audit on this equipment because of how old it was. Now our third-party supplier is all selling us products that are SQF certified. So it solved a whole host of problems. There's no question in my mind it was the right thing to do. So yeah, that's just one example from Stuckey's of how, I think the habits that were formed here helped me and helped us make a good decision at Stuckey's. So.
Well, you started to touch on some of the different steps in your career. How about filling a little bit more of how you came from being here to being CEO and the steps along the way?
So when I left here, I was very interested in public service. I was an American Studies degree major, which I understand doesn't exist here anymore. It was a good fit for me. You can tell by the Wendell Berry patches that I read. I really appreciate a general education. So American Studies was great for me, and I always had an interest in public service. So I took an internship on the Hill in Washington, D.C. I did that. It was only about a 3-month internship. In those 3 months, I fell in love with Washington, D.C. and wanted to stick around. And I was driving down Constitution Avenue. No, I wasn't driving. I was riding in a taxi. And I know it was a taxi because it was 2006 and we didn't have Uber back then. And my phone rang, which was probably a Nokia. And it was the White House office of the State Department office of White House liaison. They had gotten my resume and asked me if I wanted to come interview for a job at the State Department, which is exactly what I wanted to do. I'd traveled a lot in college. I'd been to Argentina for a whole summer trying to learn Spanish. Travel and other cultures is just something that I have always had a lot of interest in. So the State Department was right up my alley. I was so thankful to get the opportunity even to interview. I went in and interviewed with what would become my future boss and got the job. And I stayed there for about 2 years. And it was like a graduate education. I always thought maybe I would go on and get an MBA or something like that from Oglethorpe. But I think that job was like a graduate education. I went to 25 countries during that time.
It's not too late.
Yeah, indeed. We worked a lot on really interesting issues during that time. So just one example of that, kind of the main thing, and this will be, perhaps controversial, but it's what it is. We were, of course, in Afghanistan at the time, and NATO allies with ISAF. One of the key things we were interested in was figuring out how to get Afghan farmers to grow something other than poppy. They were growing 93% of the world's poppy at that time, and it was the main source of funding for the insurgency that we were trying to fight. And so, of course, the question is, how do we take the money out of the insurgency? And the biggest question was, do we aerial spray poppy or not? Should we do that? The concern that the Department of Defense had at the time was this will cause us to lose the hearts and minds of the people. And the State Department's position at that time was it will cause us to win the hearts and minds of the people because, and this is going to sound anachronistic in retrospect, because we need to persuade them that we're going to win. If they think that we're going to be here for the long haul, then they will fight for us, not against us. And there was a new constitution in Afghanistan at the time which made poppy production illegal. And so, this was a question of, can we help the new Afghan government establish the rule of law in this place? So the State Department's perspective was, we should do aerial sprays because it will actually help us persuade the people on the ground that we're going to be successful in this, because they're getting notes on their door at night from the insurgents, saying plant poppy or else. So it was an exceedingly difficult challenge. Whether it would have been right or wrong to spray from there, I don't know. But that was the big debate that I was involved in at the time. Met with President Karzai, probably 30 stars worth of generals over those 2 years. Just a fantastic experience. I ended up leaving that job because, there were a number of factors, but I realized that actually traveling all the time is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in it, if you know Wendell Berry, that's a hint, but he's a big fan of being a member of a community, right? Being rooted, making commitments to people and keeping them. And I wanted to be a part of a community like that. It was very difficult to find that with a job like I had with the State Department. And so in the end, I decided, I called my dad. Dad was actually in the process of trying to sell the family farm at that time. I called my dad. I said, I'd like to move home, apprentice with you, learn how to grow pecans, and take over the family farm. And so I did that for the next roughly 15 years. From day one, it was very clear that the farm was in trouble. The farm had a fair amount of debt. The economics of pecan farming were challenging. It was hard to see how we were going to pay off the debt that we had on the farm. And so really I started the process of trying to figure out how can we get better operationally at what we're doing, strategically, how can we stabilize the market for our product? This is what kind of led into creating Front Porch Pecans initially. That was our first effort at a consumer packaged product. And then I had a relationship with the Stuckey family. What I learned fairly quickly from Front Porch Pecans is that it's exceedingly difficult. Students at Oglethorpe, if you ever go out into the world and want to pioneer a consumer packaged product brand, let me tell you, it is exceedingly difficult. It's hard to get traction. And so I realized I need a brand that people recognize. And I picked up the phone and called my contact with the Stuckey family. It turns out they were kind of trying to figure out what to do with the brand. They didn't have any good direction, and they were losing money too. So we put together a plan. Stephanie, who was the granddaughter of the founder of Stuckey's, and I, we had a common vision for what could be for Stuckey's. And I don't know if you know this, but pecans are the only tree nut native to North America. So almonds, pistachios, walnuts, these all come from Europe or Asia. Pecans are also every bit as healthy as all those other nuts. The reason you probably think they're not is because the Almond Board of California got a federal marketing order in the 1960s and began spending tens of millions of dollars to educate you on the health benefits of almonds. And pistachios did the same thing in the early 2000s to the tune of much higher numbers, actually. And they were able to move the needle much faster. So in 2016, the pecan industry in the United States was able to get a federal marketing order. And that's about the same time that Stephanie and I were talking about trying to do this. So we thought the category of pecans as a snack for the American consumer is about to grow. And we think the Stuckey's brand is as well positioned as any to be at the vanguard, to be early in this space. We knew it couldn't be like Wonderful Pistachios, which has a supply monopoly. The Resnick family literally bought over 50% of the pistachio acreage in California and then started spending a lot of money on marketing, making people want to buy a lot of pistachios. And they were extremely successful with that. But that kind of supply monopoly was never going to happen in pecans. They're grown in 16 states. The growers and the processors and all are very fragmented. That's just not possible in our industry. So we know there's going to be competition, but we think, with our brand, we've got as good a chance as any at being on the front of that. And so then we acquired the facility in Augusta, and here we are.
Terrific. So can you talk a little more about how your experience in the State Department has informed your subsequent career, and perhaps when you've made these decisions to pivot, what have you been reflecting upon, and what do you think about when you're deciding to make a career pivot like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing that I've reflected on most about my time at the State Department is what I refer to as just the fog of war. And I want to use that term carefully because I'm not a serviceman, right? I wasn't a soldier. I wasn't on the ground like our military personnel were there. But nonetheless, as we were trying to make policy decisions at the State Department, one of the things that made that difficult as much as anything else is just finding good information. What is the reality? Getting a true understanding of the reality on the ground, because that has to inform what good policy looks like. And all of my experience in business has been in entrepreneurial type ventures. I mean, a family farm, even if it is 30 or 40 years old, that is an entrepreneurial business. And Stuckey's, it's a 90-year-old business, but we're still in an entrepreneurial phase. It's a 90-year-old startup business is what we tell people. And in those contexts, business, it is very difficult to gain a good understanding of what is really true. And I'll come back to Kahneman here. An example, this is more on, I think the last example is more strategy. This is maybe more operational excellence, but one of the things he talks about, so let's do a little experiment. Let's see, how do we want to do this? Well, shout it out if you think you have the answer. Okay. A baseball bat and a ball costs $1.10, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Everybody's doing the math carefully. It is not a trick question, but your brain is going to try to trick you. If you're like me, when I first read Thinking Fast and Slow, my first thought was 10 cents. That's not the answer. The answer is 5 cents. And what happens is System 1 thinks intuitively, and it just comes up with an easy answer just like that. What System 2 is not doing, if you say 10 cents, is checking the work of System 1. And again, I mean, this is coming back to the liberal arts education. I think, if you show up to class on a Tuesday morning and there's a class discussion and you haven't read closely, you might be tended to say things from an intuitive perspective that are wrong.
No one here would do that.
No one would do that. Yeah. Let's be honest. But that's not going to go well for you. Someone's probably going to argue with you if it's a good class setting, right? So I think we learn, again, a habit, a virtue of maybe diligence or conscientiousness in a liberal arts education like that. So we had a situation recently at Stuckey's where we were trying to improve a process. We make a product called kettle glazed pecans. And basically the process, we cook the ingredients in a copper kettle. We pour them on a table to cool. We have to toss them while they're cooling so they don't all stick together. And then we put them in a box at the end. And I was sitting there with my production director and another guy in our team and just said, how can we do this more efficiently? It seems like we've got room for improvement here. And the quick answer was we need more tables. We've got 2 tables. If we have more tables, we could have more nuts on the tables at a time. And, we thought, okay, well, let's think through that. What is our capacity right now with the tables that we have? How long do the pecans need to sit on the tables? 20 minutes. 20 minutes per table. Okay. So 20 minutes per table. We've got 2 tables. The quick math. Now we work 4 10-hour shifts. So there's 60 10-minute intervals in a day for us. We were making 24 batches a day. So 100% efficiency for us is 60 and we're doing 24. We said, let's just try starting a new pot every 10 minutes and see what happens. We made 35 pots the next day and we made 40 pots the day after that. And that's just one example. It doesn't always go that well, I can tell you. And sometimes you try something and it doesn't work and you got to go back to the drawing board. But I think that's illustrative of how hard it is to find truth when System 1 is wanting to race forward from an intuitive perspective. We need more tables. So finding a true understanding is, I think, back on my time at the State Department and kind of what that was like. Yeah, I think that's kind of the main takeaway.
So could you perhaps comment, to the extent that you're comfortable, what effect have changes in tariff policies, for example, had upon your company? Yeah,
I'll be more free with that here than I was a few weeks ago when some of our senators were interviewing me about that. They have had a massive impact. And really the tariffs in 2017, so just a little history of pecan prices over the last 20 years for you. When I came home in 2007, pecans were selling for a little over $1 a pound. At that same time, China began buying pecans very aggressively because for the first time in history, the price of pecans had dipped below the price of walnuts, and they eat a lot of walnuts in China. But they're good merchants, and so when the pecans went below walnuts, they started buying pecans. And the consumers there loved them because, of course, they did, because they're delicious.
Who doesn't love a pecan?
Yeah. So even when pecans went back up above walnuts, there was still consumer demand in China for the product. We went from essentially 0 exports to China to shipping 1/3 of the U.S. crop, which is about 100 million pounds a year over the course of, say, 3 to 5 years, roughly. So by 2012, we were shipping 1/3 of the crop to China, and prices had gone up from just over $1 to, at their highest, we were selling the really best quality pecans for $2.75 and the lower quality for around $2.30. So a dramatic increase. I mean, you think about a family farm that's struggling to make it, and then that happens to the price of your commodity. It was game changing, and we were so relieved by that. And then the tariffs literally brought all that back to zero. All of it back to zero. So today, we averaged about $1.30 last year on our crop. People ask me my thoughts on this, probably in no small part to Dr. Cower back there, but I'm a big fan of free trade. I believe in competitive advantage, and I'd like to see a freer flowing trade system.
You're among friends.
Yeah.
I guess same question in terms of immigration policy. Has that affected your ability to attract workers?
Great question. Less so. We've got a better story to tell there, and at least for now, I will say. What we found is we do use immigrant labor on the farm. We use the H-2A visa program, which is the legal method that we have of bringing workers in. That program has been fantastic. Interestingly, what it has done on our farm is it got us a little bit ahead of COVID wage inflation. Whereas a lot of people were kind of caught on their haunches with that. We had given a lot of increases to our employees, both domestic and international, that was driven honestly by the H-2A program. And that program has remained intact so far. So yeah, if that, and it is in question right now, but if that goes away, it will present major challenges to us.
Okay. Well, I've been going for a little while now. I'm going to open up the floor, see if students have any questions. If you do, raise your hand and perhaps come forward. We have a microphone. Yes. Why don't you come forward?
Hello, how you doing?
Good. What's your name?
My name is Zig. I'm a freshman. My question is, what's the single most important mindset or leadership principle you rely on every day?
Leadership principle. This is going to sound, it's not something you ever heard before. I do think a sort of servant leadership approach is very important and very effective. When we bought Stuckey's, there was a manager there who will remain nameless who had a very command and control style. Yeah. And what we found out is that he was very effective, very capable, one of the smartest men I've probably worked with. But even for him, everything had to pass through his hands. Okay. And so to scale anything up became impossible. And what I think a servant leadership style does is that leader empowers the people who are working for him. And so your ability to scale an organization and an operation when you have that sort of thing happening, it is at a factor of however many. I mean, it is a huge benefit. And we've seen the very real impact of that at Stuckey's.
Okay, so you mainly see like the leader works for the people, not the people working for the leader.
I don't know if I would put it that way. I think what you still need strong leadership. You've got to have a leader who's casting vision well, who's communicating well, over communicating multiple times. Something I have done poorly, to confess. I'll say something one time and then expect everybody to have it and never miss it. And you don't want to do that. You want to say it multiple times in multiple places, multiple different ways. So there is something about leadership that has to sort of take the helm. But there's a way to do that that empowers the people that report to you and gives them agency in the organization.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Great questions.
Who else has questions? Yes, come on up.
First of all, I want to say thank you for the mic and for the amazing conversation. So my name is Adir Aliyerma, and I'm a current freshman, and I'm studying mathematics and minoring in computer science. So I had been thinking a lot about entrepreneurship, and I wanted to ask you, looking back to when you were a freshman, what would you tell your younger self about taking those first steps toward starting something or just thinking about building something meaningful?
Very good question. The first thing that pops into my mind is, and this is going to be practical, it is possible to do it. I think the freshman version of myself would have thought, I got no money. And so how am I going to start something? And, opportunities like raising capital maybe get a little bit more pressed these days than they did back then. But I really didn't know that was an option. I thought somebody like me who had no capital to put into a business pretty much had to go get a job. Now, there may be some wisdom in that, so don't take me wrong. But if you've got a good idea and you've got the right kind of personality, there's been a lot written about grit, and there's a lot of legitimacy to that. And you have risk tolerance, which is important. Then you can raise money. And there's a lot of people out there, high net worth individuals, private equity groups that you can go to and raise the money. It is possible to do it. So that's what I would have told myself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, come forward.
My name is Gopika Das. I'm majoring in business administration. So I'm just wondering, due to the current government shutdown, has there been any impact in your company's business operations?
No, we've not had any impact from that. Now, we live in a military community. We've got an Army fort there. And so there's a lot of people looking for jobs right now. So I'm a little bit opportunistic, to be honest. I'm thinking perhaps we can grab some good talent out of the whole ordeal.
That's all.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes, come forward.
Hello, my name is David Hammond, number 7 of the 11 philosophy majors on campus.
Welcome.
Hello. And a student investor.
Yes, and student investor.
What makes
under
you
Dean Kraft.
7? Why not 1?
Oh, number 7 because I was the 7th one to major. of
Okay.
the current active ones on campus. 18% of our department is in the student investment fund class. So, I'd like you to walk us through the American Studies class and its curriculum. How do you believe that impacted your business and the way you approach things?
Yeah. That's going to be more on a kind of values perspective than real practical implication. I think, the liberal arts education values I find were more helpful in business. But what the American Studies major gave me that is still relevant, I think, is just context. Where am I in history? What has business looked like in the past? Why is business important? Why is it meaningful? Those sorts of questions. And that the other young man asked about a meaningful business. He used that word, a meaningful business. I assume he meant by that one that's impactful in some way. But I'd actually argue any business, I mean, there are things that are harmful to society, so I would take those out. But anytime you're providing a unique value to a customer, that's a meaningful business, So yeah, just more on you're a philosophy student, like you kind of the philosophy side is more the value that I got from that, I think.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Anybody else? Come on. Come on down.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Lance, an accounting major and econ minor. And my question was, what technology in recent years has really driven development in the pecan industry? And how has that affected risk assessment and risk tolerance?
That is a fantastic question. There's so much that we could talk about. I would say that maybe the most relevant technology in our industry, there's so many. Let's go with, so they've got, there's a precision, so we use pesticides, sorry, but we do. It's very hard to grow pecans in Georgia without controlling the fungus that grows on pecans and will take your whole crop. Pesticides are expensive, and we spray them regardless of what size the tree is. Historically, the traditional method is you spray them regardless of what size the tree is. They come out with technology that uses a camera on the front of your tractor. It monitors what the target of the spray is. It's got solenoid valves on each of the nozzles on the spray boom, and it'll turn them off if there's not something there to hit. Sounds obvious, right? We can save 70% of the cost of a spray application through these precision spray technologies. How does it affect risk assessment? It makes us more profitable. It reduces costs, reduces OpEx in the business. I don't know that one moves the needle as much as I would like on risk assessment, but it's been really amazing to see like driverless tractors have come into agriculture now, GPS driven. Some of the aerial infrared imagery that we're getting now is surprisingly good for diagnosing weak areas in a field. I mean, I could go on and on. Yeah, great question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perhaps anybody else? Sure, of course. Come.
You're mentioning the precise employment of pesticides and discussing it in terms of risk factor. Of course, pesticides provide a health risk to many people.
Yes.
So is that reduction, have you quantified the amount of potential and improvement you get on health risk as a result of reducing that pesticide?
It does. And that's a great question too. This is one of the things, not a lot keeps me up at night. This is one of the things that does. I've done everything I know how to do to get our guys, and we have had gals too, operating these tractors, to wear the proper PPE. And it is hard to get them to do it. So yes, there is, I think, some benefit. It's not absolute. There's still a risk there. A lot of, I will say, a lot of the worst offenders from an environmental perspective are no longer on the market. That's not to say that there aren't some things that are harmful, but there has been progress, I guess I would say. There has been progress. So, yeah.
Right. So someone who has been at the top of corporate life, have you seen consistent markers of success that you can share, especially with the students who are here?
Yes. We've got a really great team at Stuckey's. As I'm thinking about one of the blessings we've had just because of our brand and the nostalgia that people have for it, emotional attachment to it, we get a lot of really good talent who wants to work for us at less than what they're worth. And that's not always a great way to approach HR, but we have to be scrappy. And so here we are. And so the great people that we have are very good networkers, for one. And they're very good leaders. I mentioned servant leadership earlier. We've got at least two really key people at Stuckey's who have been exemplary to me. One, it comes from an HR background, and I've learned a tremendous amount from him just about developing younger or more junior people. So that would be maybe the third thing I would mention is just an emphasis on, we need more. We can't do it on our own. We've got to develop people in our organization who have the skills that we need. And we're working with a rural population. We're working with a population that maybe hasn't had as much development as those of us in this room. So to see that kind of proactive pouring into the people in our ranks, that seems to be important to success, which I think is telling because was it Harry Truman who said it's amazing how much you can get done if you don't care who takes the credit? Or at least it's attributed to him. I look at it that way. Since the State Department, I haven't really been in a context where my personal success was separated in any way from the success of the organization. And so that's just kind of the way I'm wired, and I try to surround myself with other people who are wired that way, and that seems to be really key.
So following up on that then, what is there a particular attribute or skill that you think is particularly difficult to hire for?
I don't have a good answer to that. What I will say is in hiring, everybody I've ever hired has problems, imperfections, including myself. And so if you're in a position where you're trying to get a job, I'm always trying to figure out I'm trying to predict what's the problem. I know there's going to be a problem with anybody I hire. oftentimes it's interpersonal quirks and things that just jam up the free flow of the organization. And so I would say, yeah, that is the kind of thing, if I'm a student here, I'm about to be going into some interviews, really work on those soft skills and, present yourself as someone who is going to promote the organization working together and the cohesion of the organization. I think that's really hard to find.
Those are fantastic thoughts. Any final parting thoughts you'd like to share with the group before we?
I was going to say this earlier, so I'll just say it now, how thankful I am to be back on campus. This place is a place where I created some of my best memories, including scaling the library, which we didn't talk about very much. Yeah.
We were hoping to get through all of this without hearing this one.
So. Two of my best friends in the world to this day I made while I was here. It really changed. I came here as I won't say small-minded, but maybe a little bit parochial, and I left very curious. So I'm just thankful for what Oglethorpe has meant to me and thankful to be back.
Well, please join me in thanking R.J. Lamar for being here. R.G. Lamar. And I'd like to invite everyone to stay for our reception. We have some fabulous food and have an opportunity to come and meet our guests. So thank you.